again. And some of you may have noticed that I was actually away for a while, and so I wanted to use my first slide to do a shameless plug. I was actually away on parental leave for just over a month. That's my little daughter Evelina there, and so it's good to be back. We had some great family time. But yeah, good to be back with the team doing some more ThoughtFarmer customization. So I also wanted to use this as an excuse. She's 3 months old, so sleep is a little bit of a hit and miss these days. So I apologize in advance if some of my sentences aren't completely comprehensible, but we'll take it as it is. There is a question and answer period at the end, of course, so just feel free to ask there for any clarification for anything that I missed or that wasn't clear. So this webinar, I wanted to start out to be a little bit more technical. I wanted to start with some of the terminology because I think sometimes it's not clear. There are a lot of different extension points into ThoughtFarmer. So I just wanted to be very clear about what custom portlets are, what APIs are, what custom handlers are, and offer you some guidance and a framework of reference to kind of help you decide what is possible, and also some examples to go along with it. We're going to do a whole kind of buffet of examples to give you a lot more food for thought for what is possible within ThoughtFarmer. So the first term you kind of hear a lot is custom portlets. Custom portlets are actually created within ThoughtFarmer. You can code them right in there with C# and JavaScript and CSS. We have a management page to add them to pages. And you can essentially think of it as an add-on. You're not redesigning the entire intranet. You're just kind of adding a new room and kind of adding it onto the side and doing a small discrete set of functionality. So this is something that we do a lot, and it's completely open to you as well. There's areas in the admin panel for you to do that. And I'll demonstrate that briefly as well too with a demonstration later. Another term you hear often is APIs. This is a much more wider programming term. It just simply means application programming interface. And what that is, it's just like the tools and the gears and the hooks that software developers will use to interact with any piece of other software, like a system like ThoughtFarmer or some other application. So simple functions like get content, get children, update content, add tags. This is something that an API would do and allow other developers to interact. So once you have an API, like ThoughtFarmer as an application has one, someone can write some code that kind of sits in the middle, interacts with that API, and forms a bridge between making interactions on that system automatic, or if another system has an API, then the code can essentially just go back and forth and kind of fit it together so that you can migrate content and perform some other integrations that otherwise wouldn't be possible without an API in place. The other one I'll just briefly go over, because a lot of people aren't aware that we can do this, is custom handlers. And the best way to describe this is just to say this is how we extend our default ThoughtFarmer API to do things that it might not do out of the box. Our REST API is fairly well documented on our support site, but if there's ever anything missing that your developers might run into, then a custom handler might actually be the job for that. And I can show you how to do that as well too. So I'm just going to switch screens here. And I'll start off with a couple great examples of custom portlets. So these are a couple new portlets that we've developed recently. You'll see over here on the left-hand side is actually a stock ticker portlet. So this was something that that a company wanted developed, and basically it just allows you to look at stock prices in real time. So this is actually going out and polling the Google API, which allows us to get information every 5 seconds, basically, and update it live. So this is a really good example of that small but discrete functionality that custom portlets are really good for. The other one as well, too, you'll notice right below it, this isn't default. Our default news is actually much more like this. It doesn't support pictures. When it's on the side, we have a lot of great options in the middle, like the carousel and the, the grid news. But if you wanted images in the left or right columns on the home page, we did have something default that did that. But this custom portlet allows you to put news on the side and have an image with it, and allows you to also change it to whatever layout you want. It's very flexible that way. So just a bit of a technical look at where those are configured. Just thought I'd go to the admin panel here real quick. So you can see that we have a whole list of portlets here. This is my demo page. But developers would typically go in, write the code for it, and then once the code is created, you can go ahead and actually add instances of that to your intranet through managed portlets. So I'll do a quick example here. So this is that side column news one. It's a portlet that I've already created, but I might want to actually use a different set of configuration parameters for it. These are all coded into it. This is something we do pretty standard, so you can reuse pretty much everything that we give out. So in this case, I want to change the source ID to use something else and the number of posts to be 2. And then once I add that, I can actually go back to my home page here. And you'll see that same portlet with a different configuration over here on the right-hand side. So this is really an example of custom portlets kind of in their very small, discrete functionality use case, and then how to actually configure them. So to give you a good example of APIs, I wanted to show you kind of what APIs are and how we use them. This is actually the result of an API call to our support site. As you can see, it's not really meant for humans. It's meant for an application to kind of go through. It's very structured. This is how you get our data back. So this is just getting content from their support site. Now, what you're able to do in that case is do things like migrations. So let's see if I can actually find that page here. So a very good use case for APIs is the migration of content. One of our clients wanted to set things up in a staging environment, and they actually kind of really wanted to start their internet from scratch. But they didn't want to publish the content on the other site. They wanted to do it all in testing and then actually find a way to migrate it in bulk. So here we have a landing page that basically just is where I actually want some content to live. And then if I go back over to the support site, we can see that, hey, I actually want this content to be taken over to this other site. Without the use of an API, it's a completely manual process. Someone would actually have to go through and do that. But with an API, you can actually just, any coder can kind of go in, write an application that just runs through, logs into each of those, and then essentially just iterates through and creates all those pages. So very quickly, you can bring over dozens and dozens of pages in mere seconds. So you'll see here, this is actually a live demo, so that actually all happened just right away. So the nice thing about it too is that it preserves the navigation, the hierarchy, everything like that, and pulls over all the images as well too. And some of you might not know this, but we actually have our public documentation all over here. All of this public documentation is actually authored within ThoughtFarmer. So we use a similar tool that basically just pulls it out when we're done the documentation for a new version directly from our support site, written completely in ThoughtFarmer, and then brings it over to this WordPress site. So there's a similar application like I just showed you that just runs through and actually goes ahead and does all that bulk work for us. Would just be ridiculously time-consuming otherwise. Brings over hundreds and hundreds of pages in a matter of a minute or two. So that's kind of the end of the super technical part of it, just to give you an idea of what's possible with APIs and that kind of thing. So now I'll just go into a few more just straight ahead examples, give you an idea of what we've been doing lately. Some of you might have seen this before if you came to our summit this year, but I figured it was worth another review again because it's a pretty common use case that comes up. And the use case is that you have documents on your intranet that you need people to say, hey, yes, I have read this. There's compliance requirements as far as that goes. So it's important that you track that and that people acknowledge that they've read certain key pieces of content. So that's exactly what this customization does. It's triggered by people adding this tag, required reading. So this is a little trick that we did to add customizations. Once this is in place, then the custom portlet knows that it should actually run on this page. And what you're going to see, you're going to see editors are going to see this little report on the side, and it also gives them a way to manage what users are actually required to read that bit of content, because it might vary. Sometimes you want it globally, in which case you can add all registered users, or maybe just limit it down to a specific subset of users. So in this case, when those users come to this page, all they're going to see is this button here, and all this you can customize and change the layout as well too. Once they click confirm, every time they come back to the page, they won't see that again. And you'll see over here on the right, the users that have actually confirmed they read the page, and everyone else who hasn't yet. Of course, the nice thing about a lot of these customizations is that we can then roll these up into admin reports. So this is something that would be available to the content editors. Basically, you just use the security to lock that down to whoever you want, and then allow them to see, like, this is a roll-up of all the documents that we have labeled as required reading, and how we can actually use them on the intranet. So my next example is another common use case, and this was actually a really great set of tools. It was a combination of custom portlets and handlers, and in this case also a service that was configured to run every night. And the problem here is that a lot of you will probably understand this as well, is that content can really get stale quickly, especially if you have a really open intranet, people are collaborating. The kind of increased openness also increases the likelihood that content can become stale, which makes search results a little bit more difficult. So they wanted a set of tools to kind of give content creators kind of a little bit more ownership and responsibility as far as curating that content that they do create. So in this case, an email service would go out every once a week. It was configurable, and just say, hey, you have this stale content, and maybe you might want to take a look at it and do something about it. In their case, the stale content was defined as anything older than 6 months and that had a review date in the past. So a review date was some custom metadata that they could add to pages. Just say, hey, this content is still good, it's really old, but let's review it again in a year, that kind of thing. So they would first get this email, and then they would be able to go to a page where they could actually do something about it. So in this case, let me see here. Oh yeah, so it was a single page that would actually, whoever the user was that accessed this page would actually get their still content returned. So in that case, it was going back and getting all that, and then they could go ahead and set a review date for the content if they wanted. Let's say I want to review it at the end of the month, refresh my report, and that would keep it off the list until the next time. Or if they knew right away, like, hey, this is really, really old, I'm just going to archive it, they could do it right from here, or delete it if they wanted as well too. So it made it a lot easier for people to see what content they owned, what content was potentially stale, and of course it also had an admin report so that content, like intranet administrators, could actually see everybody's stale content and get a good sense of how their intranet was doing. In this case, Caroline, looks like you've got a lot of work to do on the support site. But fortunately, we don't have that requirement here, so we can just leave that. And of course, too, you could also export everything. So this was a common kind of request. It's like, okay, you can display all this data, but I also need to archive it in Excel format if I need to. So export buttons everywhere. Okay. So the next one I want to go over, this is another example of a way to customize tagging content. The use case for this one was a client had all of their content stored in a file server, but they wanted to be able to tag it and to find content easily, but because the file server doesn't really support that, they were finding that they had to maintain an Excel spreadsheet that basically had rows where the file name was and then tags that would go along with it. So it was quite well set up for Excel, but it was very ridiculous to maintain when you wanted to add content, because essentially one person had to do this all the time, make sure this spreadsheet was up to date so people could find files quickly. So for their customization, they opted to migrate all of that content into ThoughtFarmer, so it was all indexable. You could have the tagging capabilities built right in, but they also wanted to be able to make sure people were adding tags that corresponded to the different tag bundles that they wanted. And in this case, we built out a custom tag for them. Let's see if this comes up here. Yeah, there we go. So you notice this is quite different than what the default tags are. Let me see if I can find an example here. So this is normally what it looks like. It's just a simple entry point, and that's about it. But they wanted to make sure that their custom metadata and their tag bundles were first. So these keywords are actually coming from a specific bundle as well as the years and the publishers. And this is doing some smart scanning. So for example, if we actually look at this document, we can pick out a word here. What's a good one? Accelerometer. And then they had this tag bundle of keywords. So the keywords were something that were changing all the time, and they wanted to be able to have a way to manage that. So as different keywords became important, they could modify that, and then basically this would do a real-time scan. So as soon as it popped open, you see it went through, scanned that document, and said, oh, actually, this keyword is actually pretty important there. Maybe you should add it as a tag. So this was kind of a real easy way for them to get the tags that they wanted onto content without having to go through kind of this older method here, which wouldn't work for their use case. So the nice thing is that once all these tags are actually added in, then it's a pretty simple matter to search for it within the context of a page. So you could also just go to the section search. And then all these tags would be readily available for you there and filter down exactly how you wanted it to. So I thought that was a really good one to show how you can actually go about enhancing an existing functionality like tagging and make it more relevant to your organization and your needs around that. So actually, this is another example here of how you can kind of enhance a default feature like forms. Forms is, this is what a standard form looks like. But what one client wanted to do was kind of, they wanted to create an innovation forum. And the idea behind the innovation forum was a place where people could add their ideas quickly and easily and have other people vote on them. They also had to be separated by business area. So there's a little bit more metadata that they wanted to add to it. But at the same time, the whole functionality around like adding a question, going through this like edit page, seemed a little bit cumbersome to them. So they wanted a way to kind of streamline that to make it a little bit more, less barriers for people to actually collaborate and add ideas. So what they ended up doing is something like this here. This is a landing page that just allows you to submit your ideas, a brief description of how it's done, and then instead it uses just a simple form. So it's pretty open, already ready to go. These business areas actually correspond to tags. So for example, like my profile here, my business area is executive. So this way it's not like, oh, step one, go to your profile, make sure that you have this tag set. Like those things were just barriers. So we just build this right in. So it's very simple. If they don't have it set, it would actually change it for you within your profile when you click submit. I'll just put something in here real quick. And then essentially once you submitted the idea, it was actually going back out to that forum and creating a post for you there. They also wanted to have this more stylized view of the actual posts so that it's carefully brought out between the idea, the description, and the benefits to the business. And then would automatically be tagged. You can see over here that that selection was already added. And some of the wording as well too. So you were contributing to ideas instead of posting, so that kind of thing here. And also we had our own designers work on this as well too to kind of go along with the idea they had. So part of that was bringing out this box to showcase like the like. By default it's kind of up here, it's a little bit hidden. But the idea behind this form is to get people to like and collaborate. So bringing that out a little bit more prominently like this was something our design team felt was really important, and ended up bringing it together quite nicely. And the other final big piece to this was the actual form itself. Now if you go remember the original form, just had just the basic, the title and that kind of thing, but they also wanted to see quickly at a glance what the idea actually was, and also like how many likes, how many replies, and also have that custom tags to it. So which ones are part of human resources, which ones are part of the executive team, that kind of thing. And like I said before, everybody loves to export to Excel, so that was another requirement for this, so they could kind of quickly and easily get the data they wanted into Excel and archive it and then go through it a little bit easier there. So here you can see the narratives, the titles, business area, and so on. Yeah, so this was a really good example of someone who liked what we had in ThoughtFarmer but wanted to build on top of it. So this was a set of customizations that actually worked together to bring about an idea of this innovation form. So those were all the examples that I had for today. Hopefully you found the information useful, and now I'll just open it up for questions if anybody has any.
Thank you so much, Tim, for that wonderful presentation. I'm always, whenever Tim does these types of demos, and he does them in the office quite often, even though I work with Tim every day, there's always little things that I haven't seen before and that are quite delightful and surprising. So thank you so much, Tim. I'm just going to open up the question panel here. If you think of questions now, there's still time to enter them, so go ahead. The first few questions there, Tim, were all lovely little compliments about baby Evelina. So there's lots of oohs and ahs.
Yes, when she wakes me up at 3 with that little smile, it's very easy to forgive, for sure.
I don't doubt it. So we have a question here from Tracy, and the question is, regarding stale content, is it possible to set up an auto email blast to those who own content that reminds them to take a look at their content? Maybe a stale content email that goes out every 6 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, that's essentially exactly what this one did. It was configurable, so you could set it to do at a different interval if you wanted. Yeah, in that case, it was looking for content that was older than 6 months and then sending out that email. But you could change the parameters about what is defined as stale content, how the email looks, how often it's set out. So that's all stuff that is very possible to do email blasts customized to fit a certain set of criteria.
Perfect. The next question is just from Dave at BC Courthouse Libraries, and he says, Dave, you're asking if the webinar will be recorded, and yes, we are recording this session, so we'll send out a follow-up email with a link to it on our YouTube channel, so you can watch and rewatch it again later to your heart's content. There's no further questions right now. Maybe one thing, Tim, to that people might wonder is like, how do you go about if you have an idea about an extension to ThoughtFarmer or something you'd like to change, what should you do? How should you get in touch with us and those kind of things? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, the first step is usually if you have the resources on your own, you might want to, we do have documentation about the custom portlets and the REST API all on our help site. You might want to start there, looking there. But if it's just an idea and you're not sure of what is actually possible, help desk ticket is always the best. We get those all the time. Just, hey, can you guys do this? And we'll respond there. So helpdesk@thoughtfarmer.com, and then we can let you know what's possible or assist your developers if they need help with the API, or give you a quote and let you know what the work would cost and the effort involved for our professional services team to do that.
Perfect. All right, there's no more further questions at this time. Of course, if any of you that are on the webinar today, if you think of another question later, just get in touch with us at our help desk, and Tim will be more than happy to answer those later on as well. Okay, so that was it for us in Vancouver. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you, Tim, for this very insightful presentation.